Welcome to this week's episode of The Art of Authenticity. I'm Laura Koh, your host, and thank you guys for tuning in. Today we have Rupert Spira joining us. He is the acclaimed author, spiritual teacher and leader, and podcast host. If you haven't checked him out, you can find him on YouTube. He has his own site, Rupert Spira, Spira.com. And he is the author of many, many books. He has been speaking to spiritual topics, specifically the non-dualist direct path. If you don't know what that is, we will start from the beginning and walk you through. If you're aware of it and you want to hear a deep dive into ways in which you can connect to your authentic self more deeply, simply, with the most beautiful, articulate explanations, then this is the episode for you. His latest book, You Are the Happiness You Seek, Uncovering the Awareness of Being, can be purchased on his site, on Amazon. It's truly a remarkable work, and I have poured through every page. So check out today's interview. Find Rupert on YouTube, on his site. He has workshops, and he leads all sorts of different teachings and live events. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and thank you guys for tuning in. Welcome to this week's episode of The Art of Authenticity. I'm Laura Koh, your host, and today I am joined with Rupert Spira. Thank you, Rupert, for joining us today.
Thank you, Laura, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
If you haven't heard of him, I'd say run out. Check out YouTube, the books, the podcast. He is an acclaimed author, spiritual teacher, and leader around the idea of the non-dualist perspective. And Rupert, for a lot of people, I feel who haven't come into contact with your information, you're one of those people that have described, I think, a very complicated topic with such ease and clarity. Would you mind taking our audience through this? What is the direct path, and how do they connect into this non-dualist perspective that you share with the world?
Okay. You're right. It can seem very complicated. In fact, it's very simple. Let me start, before I respond to your question about the direct path, let me say something about the non-dual understanding.
Okay.
Because the direct path is really the direct path to the non-dual understanding. So let's start with that. The non-dual understanding is the understanding that underlies all the great religious and spiritual traditions. Buddhism, Christianity, Sufism, all the traditions, and of course, it's expressed by different people in different ways, depending on where and when the understanding arose. And so, this has given rise to a great proliferation of teachings and methods and disciplines and practices, but actually the understanding itself is very simple. And the understanding that underlies all these traditions is the same, because people are the same the world over, essentially. So if we were to take 3,000 years of non-dual understanding and in all the traditions and to distill it into a single sentence, it might read something like this. Peace and happiness are the nature of our being, and we share our being with everyone and everything.
Ooh, that's a beautiful sentence.
If you've understood that, or if we've understood that, we've really understood the essence of all the great religious and spiritual teachings. That's the essence of what all of them are saying in one way or another. And the reason why the teachings become complex and so many practices and disciplines develop is because we all have various objections to this statement or difficulties with it. Mm-hmm. We wonder, for instance, well, if peace and happiness are my nature or the nature of my being, and my being is obviously present all the time, then why don't I experience it all the time? and so in response to this very legitimate objection, the teaching then begins to become more elaborate and begins to elaborate pathways whereby people may discover this understanding for themselves. But the actual understanding itself is very simple. Peace and happiness are the very nature of our self or our being, and we share our being with everyone and everything. What is the direct path? The direct path, as it suggests, is the path by which we go directly to this understanding. Given that the understanding is about the nature of our being, that it is experienced as peace and happiness on the inside, and that we share our being with everyone, that's the experience we know as love, the experience of our shared being. So it's experienced as peace and happiness on the inside and love on the outside. So the direct path is the path that takes us directly to our being. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say you joined some kind of spiritual group or went to a retreat, and you were given a mantra to practice. When we practice a mantra, we're giving our attention to a sound. We're not giving our attention to our being. The sound is an object, or albeit a subtle object, which is a kind of halfway stage. It takes our attention away from the 10,000 things we were previously paying attention to, and it gives us one thing to focus on. And then in time, the mantra fades and we sink back into our being. So that would be an example of an indirect path. And I'm not making any qualitative judgment about it. I'm not suggesting it's inferior, it's more of a description. On the indirect path, we give our attention to a mantra, to the breath, to the pause between breaths, to a teacher, to a light, to an image, to etc., etc., etc. In the direct path, we go directly to our being. We don't go via an object or a teacher or a tradition we just go straight there.
And could you lead our audience? There's so much here I want to unpack, so I'm going to just take my time. Would you lead our audience in that process? So if we don't need the mantra, the meditation, how do we go directly to that innate being?
So all throughout our lives, we make statements such as, I'm 6 years old, or I am 27 years old, or I'm 43 years old, or I'm married, or I am single, or I'm a bus driver, or I am an artist, or I'm a doctor, or I am sad, or I am lonely, or I am depressed, I am excited, and so on. We're all familiar with these statements that we either speak or think about ourselves. And in each of these statements, we refer to ourself, I am. And this self is then qualified by an age, a relationship, an activity, a state of health, and so on. Now, everything that we qualify ourselves with is constantly changing. I'm not always 6 years old. I'm not always 27 years. I'm not always 43 years old. I'm not always married. I'm not always single, and so on. But I always am. The I am in each of these statements is the same. When we say one day I am lonely, and the next day we say I am in love, the two feelings are different, but it's the same self. When we say I am 6, one day, and another day I am 27, and the next day I am 43, we refer to the same self. When we say I'm married one day and I'm single the next day, we refer to the same self. So the I am always refers to our essential self, that part of ourself that never leaves us, that is consistent, that has been with us forever and will be with us forever. Everything else, the feelings, the activities, the relationships, the state of health, these are all temporary. They're not essential to us. So, in the direct path, we take the thought, I am, and we don't allow it to be qualified by any experience. We take the thought I am and we allow that thought to take us back to our essential being. So one way to do this would be to imagine now removing from your experience everything that is not essential to you.
Okay.
So take your current thought. Your current thought is obviously not essential to you. So just imagine removing it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you may be feeling, it's not essential to you. You're not always having that feeling. It comes, it exists for a while, and then it goes. So imagine removing that feeling. The sensation that you're currently feeling, the temperature of the air on your skin, your legs on the chair, your feet on the floor, these are temporary sensations. They weren't there 10 minutes ago, and they won't be there quite the same in 10 minutes' time. So imagine removing them. Your perception of the world. Close your eyes for a minute. There, your perception of the world has vanished. Open your eyes again. A new perception has appeared. No perception stays with us forever. Perceptions are intermittent. They come and they come. So take away your perceptions, take away your sensations. Now, imagine taking away everything you can take away. What's left?
Yeah, a sense, perhaps. The awareness is what you refer to it as. Yeah.
Yeah, just the raw I am.
Yeah.
The raw being, just the raw presence, before it is qualified by thoughts, feelings, activities, relationships, and so on.
And in these essential qualities, it sounds like we can think of them as temporary. They're coming and going, whereas this presence is consistent.
Exactly. When we say, I am cold, I am tired, I am lonely, I am an artist, I am a teacher, right? All the ways we qualify ourselves are temporary.
Mm-hmm.
But the self that is being qualified remains consistently present throughout all experience, throughout our lives. And the analogy that I sometimes use is the screen and the image. Every image in a movie is different, but the screen, which is the background of all the images and upon which all the images play, is the same background. And that background is by definition colorless. It's on account of the colorlessness of the screen that all the colors in the image are able to appear. Imagine if the screen was red. Only reddish colors would be possible.
Right.
But because the screen is transparent, all colors are possible. Because our being is, so to speak, transparent or devoid of qualities, sometimes said to be empty. It is for this reason that all experience can be added to it. If let's say your being was inherently sad, only sad feelings would be possible. All the feelings you ever had would be tinged with sadness.
Right.
Just like all the colors on the red screen would be tinged with a red hue. But no, it's because your being is colorless that you can feel sad one day, overjoyed the next day, lonely the next day, depressed the next day, in love the next day. The whole range of feelings and indeed experiences are possible precisely because your being, the one to whom they appear or in which they appear, is itself devoid of feelings, devoid of thoughts, devoid of an age, devoid of any qualities. It is transparent. So then we use words that we use these rather clumsy words to try to not to describe our being, because it can't be described, but rather to try to evoke it. So when I say your being is transparent or empty or silent or still, they're not really accurate words. But what I'm trying to do is to give you to evoke that recognition. Yes, my essential being is free of all qualities, free of all feelings. I experience sadness, but I am not myself sad.
Mm-hmm.
I experience loneliness, but myself, my being is never lonely. My thoughts may be agitated, but my being is free of agitation. And we sometimes describe that by saying its nature is peace,
Mm-hmm.
the absence of the agitation that characterizes our thoughts.
Mm-hmm. And so this space, you sound like you're suggesting that it's like peace or like this or like that, but it's almost like when we place language on it, it's
You're
not
absolutely
quite
right.
sufficient. It
Yes,
reminds me of the T.S. Eliot poem, The Four Quartets. The
yes,
still
yes.
point in the turning world is actually a tattoo on my arm
Oh,
because
lovely. I love that poem. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
but I was so struck by the idea of him trying to place words to this space, the still
Yes,
point,
exactly.
which is neither here nor there or from or towards, but there it is. Yeah.
That's exactly why we have poetry, because poems, as you well know, and of course all your readers well know, poems are not supposed to describe our experience. Their purpose is to evoke in us the experience that the poet is having. And the poet uses words not to describe their experience. On the contrary, they realize their experience cannot be adequately squashed into these clumsy symbols, words. And yet they're so skillful with their use of words that their words have this evocative power. And they don't describe the experience, but they take us to the experience.
Uh-huh. Right. Right. And that's how we can locate it within ourself by something within us wakes up to the
Exactly.
knowing of what they're using to the
Exactly.
best of their ability
Exactly.
to describe.
You
Yeah.
you can read a poem that if somebody asked you to explain it, you'd be lost for words. You can't. But when you read it, exactly as you say, something wakes up inside and says, "Yes, I've always felt that, but I could never articulate it." But this poet has somehow managed to put words to it that's closer to the experience that I could ever come by trying to actually describe the experience. So there is this, exactly as you say, this recognition wakes up in you.
Mm.
And that is the purpose of the poet, to wake up this recognition in us of something that we all know, but we had forgotten.
Yeah.
That's why when you if we didn't know the experience that the poet was referring to, we wouldn't understand it. It would just, the words would be gobbledygook.
You're right. Right. And it is very specifically like that. You try to tell your friend, well, it's really meaningful, this art or this experience. But when you put it to words, it's not quite right. But there's
Yes,
this innate felt knowing that you've come into something
yes,
truthful. But
exactly.
articulation is the goal for poets or philosophers, but it's not easy to get close enough.
There was, I don't remember which Zen master it was, he said something like this: if I speak, I tell a lie. But if I remain silent, I'm a coward.
Mm, beautiful. And so why a coward? Because you have
But
to
a
try,
coward
essentially?
because you've touched something in yourself that you know is true,
Yeah.
that you know is absolutely true, that is not just the sum total of the contents of your personal mind. You've touched something that's eternal. You've touched something that is true not just for you, but for everyone. And you feel compelled as a result to confess it. It's like your impersonal, your loving impersonal duty to speak it. And if you don't, you've shirked your sacred duty.
Mm,
Picasso said the same thing about art. He said, all art tells a lie, but it points to the truth.
right. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Because the frameworks that we have to speak to this space are always slightly inadequate to the experience of it.
Yes, because if you think about our language has evolved to describe the parts of experience. We talk about people, about tables, chairs, buildings. These are all fragments. But what if you want to express the whole?
Yeah.
There isn't a language for that.
Yeah.
And yet everything is an appearance of that.
Yeah.
In reality doesn't consist of 10,000 discrete, independently existing things. Reality is whatever it is one.
Mm-hmm.
But all our words describe the 10,000 things. So every word is a lie. If we wanted to speak the truth on this conversation, Laura, we would just sit here in silence for an hour and a half. Nothing we say is true. And it's all we've got. Well, it's not all we've got. We have poetry, we have music, we have literature, we have silence. There are many other ways, but conversation is a very legitimate way. And we acknowledge that these words, that they're clumsy, abstract symbols. Mm-hmm. But because of the meaning we have all agreed upon, we can communicate a lot with these words, and we can use the words that have evolved to describe the parts to somehow evoke the experience of the whole.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So then talk to me about authenticity. This is a show about authenticity. The people who tune in, myself included, are interested in this sense, right? I mean, I've interviewed hundreds of people and I hear the same thing. There's something within me that I knew that wherever I wasn't where I needed to be, and I needed to change, but I didn't know where. But they're looking within themselves for that feeling of authenticity, that sense of there's something congruent with myself and the world, and my life sort of reflects back what feels truest for me. Yes. How do you think about authenticity, given the way that you just spoke about the one experience of our life being the awareness?
I think the more deeply we are in touch with our essential self or being, the more authentic we are. Mm-hmm. The thoughts, the feelings, the actions, the relationships that are informed by our essential being are the thoughts, feelings, actions, and relationships that express that. And that's what I would call true authenticity. So it's not a thought that just expresses an opinion. Let's take an extreme example. Let's say you developed an opinion about something that you read about in the news yesterday. That's an opinion that is, so to speak, on the surface of your mind. It doesn't represent your deepest love and understanding. I'm not saying it's not valid to have opinions, but it's if we want to think and feel and act and relate in an authentic way, those thoughts, feelings, actions, and relationships need to be informed by our deepest sense of ourself, mm-hmm. our deepest being. What is our deepest being? Our deepest being is the place of peace in us on the inside, and on the outside, it's the being that we share with everyone. And this the fact of our shared being is the experience we all know as love and beauty. Mm-hmm. When we feel that we share our being with a person or an animal, we call it love. When we feel like we share our being with an object or with nature, we call it beauty. But it's so love and beauty are like intrusions of reality into the normal way we see things in subject objects, self and other. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So an authentic life would be one that is guided by this felt understanding of our deepest being.
Mm-hmm. And so for people who are in a career, they're living their life and they're not feeling satisfied with their current situation, how do they start that process?
Well, I think, first of all, why are they not feeling satisfied? Because they feel that the work they're doing is not really an expression of their deepest self.
That's right.
And therefore, and we want, when I not an expression of our deepest self, and the qualities that are inherent in ourselves, if we can call them qualities, the qualities of peace, of quiet joy, love, beauty, that if we feel that the work we're doing is not an expression of these qualities that lie in the very core of ourselves, we feel that our work is somehow meaningless. We think, well, what am I really contributing to humanity? I'm not. I want to contribute something that is meaningful to humanity. I want to contribute something that brings peace, joy, love, justice, compassion, kindness, harmony, beauty into the world. Why? Because these are the qualities that are impersonal. They are innate in us. They are very intimate, but they're not qualities that come from. That they're universal qualities. They're qualities that lie at the heart of everyone. They're not just our own idiosyncratic qualities. They're the core qualities that all beings share.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this, if we're not living from that place, we feel that in a way we're cheating ourselves and cheating the world. We're not giving to the world of our fullest potential. And that feels unsatisfying. So we feel that my life is meaningless. It's not contributing anything. It's not fulfilling for myself. It's superficial. It's just functional, for instance.
Yeah, because it's very interesting. Many people I've interviewed and my clients, it's like they could be doing something actually objectively meaningful, right? Their job perhaps as a doctor, or they're doing something that one might say has value, but for them, it's not truthful to them within their essence, and so it gives them that sense. Yeah,
that's very true. But also, the contrary is also true. That someone could be doing a job which outwardly appeared to be not very significant, not contributing some great quality to humanity. You might be serving tables in a cafe, or being on a till at a checkout till at a supermarket. So something, just a very ordinary job, but still in your work and in your dealings with the customers or clients, or you could be in each interaction, you could be conveying something that somehow, just with a look, a smile, a word, a brief interaction, could take people just momentarily to the deepest place in themselves. And such a person would feel that they were living a very meaningful life. And indeed, they would be living a very meaningful life.
Yeah.
So it's not always, just as you say, you can be doing work that appears to be very significant and contributing a great deal to it, but you feel empty inside.
Yeah.
And you could also, for the contrary, be doing this apparently menial job, but actually be communicating peace and joy to people that you come in contact with.
Beautiful.
And as a result, you'd feel fulfilled in your work.
I love it. So you have a new book. You are the happiness you seek.
Yes.
I love the title. Yeah. So while we talk about this, and I mean, as I mentioned to you, I'm a philosophy undergrad graduate student. I love this topic. I could go on and on and on. But in a more simple way, it is so challenging for people to locate happiness, authenticity, what we're speaking about. You mentioned early in the conversation that there's all these structures in place to help people, mantras, meditations, religions, etc. Why is it so hard? I mean, well, you know what? Let me back up first. You've described happiness as this state, but I think people are confused between pleasure happiness and kind of a contented happiness. So perhaps you could first share how you define it exactly, and then why is it such a challenge for us? People aren't, Rupert, very happy, like in general. Yeah. They wouldn't describe themselves that way, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, our culture has educated and encouraged us to seek happiness in objective experience, in objects, substances, activities, relationships, and so on. And I don't think any of your listeners would be listening to your podcast if their search for happiness in objective experience had succeeded.
Right.
Why would they need to come to your podcast if their actions, their objects, their relationships had completely fulfilled? They wouldn't need your podcast. No, the reason people are coming to come to your podcast, to my meetings, and so on, is precisely because our search for happiness in objective experience has let us down. Mm-hmm. It hasn't led to the lasting happiness that we seek. And it's for that reason that we begin to seek alternative means, and that we end up coming to one of your podcasts or one of my meetings, and so on. So why does our culture educate and encourage us to seek happiness in objective experience? Simply because we have lost this simple understanding. We've lost touch with this simple understanding that happiness lies inside us. Happiness is the nature of our being. It cannot be provided by anything outside of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't describe the seeking of happiness outside of ourselves in shopping or like pleasure-seeking activities. Doesn't feel quite the same as the happiness that you're describing.
Well, pleasure is a physical experience. Mm-hmm. A sensory experience. The sun on your skin is pleasurable. Mm-hmm. The taste of strawberries and cream is pleasurable. Uh-huh. But pleasure doesn't always equate to happiness. Mm-hmm. For instance, imagine eating too many strawberries and cream. Mm-hmm. That doesn't lead to happiness. But however, there is a connection. We do notice that when we seek an object, hoping to derive happiness from it, that when we get the object, let's use strawberries and cream as an example, but it might be an intimate relationship, a better state of health, more money, a house, and so on. Let's just use the example of strawberries and cream. It's true that when you get the object that gives us sensory pleasure, we do also experience happiness. And as a result of this, we conflate pleasure with happiness. So why is there this connection? It's because while we're seeking the object, we are by definition unhappy. We're in a state of seeking. We haven't yet found the happiness we want. So we're in a state of seeking. When we acquire the object that we're seeking, in this case, the strawberries and cream, the seeking activity, by definition, comes to an end because we've acquired the object that we were seeking. So when the seeking activity comes to an end, the unhappiness comes to an end. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, we experience happiness. What are we experiencing in that moment? We're experiencing our being. We're tasting our being, which was always present, but it was veiled by the seeking mind. So that the acquisition of the object, the strawberries, the intimate relationship, whatever it is, the activity of the object doesn't deliver happiness. It puts an end to the activity of seeking. And at that moment, the mind collapses and we taste our true nature of happiness. But we wrongly attribute the happiness to the object acquired. And hence this cycle of seeking happiness in objects builds up and eventually leads to, or may lead to addiction. If this were not the case, Laura, there would be a different kind of happiness for every experience. There'd be a particular happiness that you feel when you have strawberries and cream, and different kind of happiness when you feel the sunlight on your skin, the different kind of happiness when you meet your intimate, but that's not the case. Happiness is always the same experience. When we were 6-year-old children, when we were 16-year-old teenagers, when we were 26 and 36, whenever we experienced happiness, by whatever means it seems to have been brought about, the happiness itself is always the same experience. Why? Because we're always tasting our being, which is always the same.
I'm having a moment that really landed for me. The seeking that you're spending all of that time. So okay, let's say you are in search of something in your life. You'd like something. How do you spend that time without the seeking quality and that unhappiness, so that you can not have these long phases without? Yeah.
It's still possible to have motivations in life, to have desires in life. It's still possible to be passionate about things. It's still possible to have desires. I'm not meaning to imply that all our desires are by definition destined to failure. No. Only the things that we desire for the sake of deriving happiness from them are destined sooner or later to end up in misery. But there's another source of desire. You can have a desire that comes from fulfillment, that comes from peace, that comes from love. So you can feel at peace, you can feel full of love, you can feel full of enthusiasm, and your desire is a means of bringing that feeling out into the world and sharing it or expressing it or communicating it. Or for instance, your desire to do your podcast. I don't get the impression that your desire to do the work you do comes from a great sense of lack, and you do it in order to fill up this emptiness. No, I feel it's because you have this love inside, this joy, and you're passionate about it, and you don't want to just keep it in your heart. You want to share it with everyone. So you can still work very hard. You still have a desire. You still organize. You still plan. But this is a desire that comes from happiness. It doesn't lead towards happiness.
Right. And in my case, you're right. I love what I do. And I'm so excited to bring that forward through the vehicles that I do.
Exactly.
But what about the person who doesn't have the clarity yet that it's the podcast or the books or the teachings? Like in my case, I have these things that I'm bringing this love through, and it's clear to me. But for somebody who's not clear, then they are in the seeking in their mind. But how would they shift that today so it's not that lack? Because I think that's a big challenge for people, is to get out of that space of wanting, lacking. Right now, your view is that it's possible to not.
We can't just cut off our desire for object. If we feel this sense of lack inside, and as a result we're seeking objects or substances or activities or relationships, we cannot successfully just discipline the mind and say, don't do that. People have tried to do this in spiritual practice, and it just creates so much frustration and conflict because the impulse to seek happiness in the object or the substance is still there, and you're just denying that impulse, which is like putting building a wall in a flowing river. It just creates so much pressure and tension, and usually the river wins in the end, and the wall comes tumbling down. So this is not a way of discipline. It's not a way of disciplining the mind and curtailing its desires. It's a way of understanding, or even more accurately, a way of recognition. What do I mean by that? Can we let's do this experientially and not just philosophically? Can we go back to the little exercise we did at the beginning of the conversation where I suggested removing everything, all the layers of experience that are not essential to you, your thoughts, your feelings, sensation, perceptions. And you just, all that remains is just being, just aware being. Now, if you would, I mean, we've already discussed and understood that we can't really describe that being. But given that, do your best. Try to use words that would most accurately describe the quality of your being after it has lost all the characteristics that it derives from objective experience. What words would you use?
Mm-hmm. I would say spaceless, timeless,
Yes.
a presence.
Yes.
Yeah, it's sort of everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Yes.
That
Yes.
quality to it. And there's a neutrality to
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Is there any agitation in it?
No.
What would be the common word to express the absence? If you instead of describing that in the negative, how would you say that positively?
Yeah, I think words like peaceful, contented.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Peace.
aware. Yeah.
Is there any anxiety or lack or sense of lack there?
Zero. Yeah.
Zero. Do you feel that your essential being needs something?
No.
Does it feel incomplete? No.
No.
Well, that's
yeah.
Exactly. That experience that you're trying to describe is the experience that we call happiness, fulfillment, ease, absence of lack. So it's that simple. Once you touch your being and you realize my being is inherently peaceful, all the peace and the happiness that I have previously sought out in the world, in objects, substances, activities, relationships, they are already the nature of my being. I can just go straight there, just like you. When I said, "Is there any lack there?" This beautiful broad smile came on your face, as if you looked at me and said, "Are you kidding? I mean, any lack there? No, it's at ease." And when we, as I said earlier, when we do get the acquired object, all that happens then is that the seeking mind comes briefly to an end. And at that moment, our true nature of peace shines. That's what we're tasting. In that moment, when you get the object and you feel happy, it's not the object that has created the happiness. The acquisition of the object has just laid your seeking mind to rest temporarily and allowed the underlying peace to surface. Well, in the direct path, we just go directly to that peace. Instead of going via the object.
And so is it your belief that if people were to connect into that space more frequently, then they'd and live their life as often as possible from connecting into that sense, that being state, that's the starting place for those who
Absolutely
are struggling?
Absolutely, yes. That I think even if one were to do this little exercise that we've done, just for 10 minutes at the beginning of one's day, or the end of one's day, any time during the day, just pause, close your eyes, let go of all the thoughts, feelings, and just return to one's being and just rest there. Just rest in that quiet presence. That just doing that, it seems to be almost nothing. It is really nothing. We're not really doing anything. We're just resting in being, as being. But doing so breaks the old habit of perpetually seeking happiness and objects. It weakens that habit. And as that habit dies down, the peace that is the nature of our being begins to emerge more and more, not just when we're sitting quietly on the sofa before we go to work in the morning, but we might be in the middle of something at work, in the middle of in between meetings or emails, and there's this spontaneous pause, not a formal period of meditation, just a spontaneous moment of pause where previously we would have reached for the fridge or for the iPhone or what, and instead of doing that, there's this pause, and we feel this peace comes from the background of our experience, and we just feel this causeless peace. And that begins to happen more and more. So our seeking activities in the world begin to die down, and without our necessarily having to do anything about it, we notice that our life, to use your language, to frame it in the context of a question you asked earlier, we begin to find ourselves being more authentic.
Yeah.
We begin to find our lives are informed by the depths of our being and the peace and the quiet joy that lives there. And we begin to notice that we don't have to verbalize it and formulate it in the way that you and I are. We just notice that a choice, we're presented with a choice. Previously, we would have chosen A, but now there's a pause. We refer spontaneously to our deepest being, not just to our surface thoughts. And this time, no, I'm going to go for B.
Mm-hmm.
So we begin to find that we make choices in terms of our activities, our relationships, all kinds of choices begin to be informed by what you would call a more authentic self. And the world begins to respond to this. We find the qualities of our friendships improve. Our work life seems magically to respond to this change of heart. We suddenly find 6 months later we've left the job we were doing. A friend called up, and we're now doing something that we love to do and that we always wanted to do. So there's this beautiful kind of response from the universe.
Yeah, it's really true. When you drop into that essence and that space, it's like a whole new world seems to open up. Perhaps because you've been in the seeking, you haven't seen what's available, or the universe is responding. Yeah,
exactly. Not because you've worked on yourself and disciplined yourself and tried it. No, just because you've just begun to sink deeper into yourself. Formally, in periods of 10 minutes here or there, but then also just spontaneously, you're walking, you're in the middle of a busy day at work, but you've been out for your lunch break and you're just walking back from the cafe to work, and there's this pause. In 5 minutes, there's nothing on your mind. You don't have to be focusing on your phone calls or your emails. So there's just this relaxation in your mind, and that's when this background of peace begins to emerge, and that informs the way you spend your day and your life. It informs your relation. It informs the qualities of your relationships, because you relate to people from this place.
Yeah, and that's what people will say. Oh, that person feels so authentic.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, what do they mean? That they're not projecting their anxieties, their fear. They're not trying to impress you. They're not trying to look good. They're just being quiet. Because why? Because they don't need to. They don't need you to validate them, to prove to like them. Their sense of their self comes from their being.
Yeah.
And they so exactly as you say, people, you feel the authenticity of the person, and you like that person because you're not met with the fear, the anxiety, the bravado, the pretend. No, you feel this person they're sincere.
Yeah. And I think that's where, our original point, like, I think too, you're the poet that speaks a truth. I think when you're in the presence of somebody who's in their truth, it wakens up that part of yourself. And then you're connecting through that. But Rupert, let me just back up for a second, because I know a lot of people out there are like, okay, so when they drop back into themselves, They're like, I don't like it in here. I'm anxious. I am stressed. And you have this beautiful reframing around this idea of I am stressed. I am anxious. I am angry. Because when we go in, there's shame. I don't like to see what's happening or it's overwhelming. So I'd prefer to
Okay.
look at my phone. So
It's
how do
just
you?
you haven't gone back far enough. You've only gone halfway back.
Okay.
You've gone back to your let me give you an analogy. Imagine an actor, John Smith, who plays the part of King Lear.
Mm-hmm.
And King Lear, as you know, he had 3 daughters. He has a terrible relationship with all of them. He's upset with them all, and there's trouble in his kingdom. He's at war with the French. And so, at the end of the play, John Smith is so identified with playing the part of King Lear that he forgets to revert to John Smith. So he goes backstage, play's ended, his friend comes to congratulate him, and he's still miserable because he's still upset about Cordelia and the French and everything. And the friend says to him, why are you miserable? And he said, and then King Lear starts explaining about his trouble with his daughters and the war with the friend. His friend says, don't be silly, you're not miserable because of that. You're miserable because you've forgotten who you really are. Who are you really? Go into yourself. Who are you really? And he's teaching him the direct path. So King Lear goes into himself, and the first thing he encounters is a turmoil of thoughts. And he starts describing his thoughts, and his friend says to him, no, those thoughts are not who you really are. They come and they go. They're not who you essentially are. Who are you really? So then he goes a bit deeper. And that's when he meets the feelings, the anxiety, the shame, the guilt, the fear. He says, I'm guilty, I'm ashamed, I'm anxious, I'm upset, I'm hurt, I'm angry. And then his friend says to him, no, you're not any of these things. You haven't gone all the way back to yourself. You've only gone halfway. Your feelings are not essential to go deeper. Take another step back. What's behind the feelings? The feelings are not always with you. What are you in the absence of those feelings? And then so King Lear goes deeper into it. He said, well, I'm a father and a husband and a king. No, his friend says, you haven't always been a father. You haven't always been a husband. You haven't always been a king, but you have always been yourself. Mm-hmm. What is that self? So he goes sink even deeper into himself than his relationships of father. And then suddenly there is this recognition, I am John Smith. And his suffering comes to an end at that moment, because he's found his true self, which is free of the character of King Lear and all his troubles. So that was an analogy in answer to your question. If when you go inside, you say, I don't like what's there, I find all this, it just means you haven't gone far enough back.
And also you suggest changing the language, right? Instead of saying, I am anxious, you suggest not attaching the I am to the emotional state?
Yes, what I would do is when we say I am anxious, the anxiety occupies 100% of the picture, and the I am disappears. Well, what I would recommend is relaxing the focus of the attention from the anxiety and emphasizing the I am, emphasizing your being. Let's take an example. Let's say now you had said to me, I am anxious. Mm-hmm. And I responded, okay, Laura, tell me about the anxiety. So imagine now you're anxious. Just describe the anxiety now.
My heart is beating. My stomach feels a little, I have a pit in my stomach. And my breathing is shallow.
Perfect. And your thoughts, what are they doing?
Busy, racing, distressed.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you said, I am anxious, and I asked you to describe the anxiety. Now you say the same words again, I am anxious. You're describing the same feeling. Now I say to you, describe what you mean by I am. What do you say?
Yeah, the I am part only. That's the
because you said I am anxious. There are these two elements to the experience: I and the anxiety. You've described the anxiety. Now describe the I am.
Right. Well. The I am without the anxiety is that spaceless, timeless place that we talked about earlier. But when I'm using it in this language, I'm attaching myself to these physical experiences.
But that's why I've separated them out. We've said I am anxious. So these two elements, I'm trying to distinguish between the two elements. So that's why I asked you, first of all, describe the anxiety.
I see.
And now I want you to describe, because when we feel I am anxious, it's 100% anxiety. That's all we really feel.
That's right.
We neglect the I am. So I'm trying now to, in the experience, I am anxious. I'm trying in an actual practical way to get you to, first of all, to describe the anxiety. That's easy. You describe the experience we all know. But now I want you to take the same experience, I am anxious. I want you to emphasize the I am, and to actually make you describe it. The only reason for asking you to describe it is because you actually have to go there.
Right.
To say, it's peaceful.
I am peaceful. I am spacious.
It's space. So that's what I mean by emphasizing the I am. You say, I am depressed. So we describe the depression. It's dark, it's heavy, it's lonely. What about the I am? If we were just to describe that, it's like you see a dark image on a screen. If I were to say to you, describe the image, you'd say it's dark, it's black, it's dense. Now, keep looking at the same image, and now I ask you, describe the screen. You say it's transparent, it's colorless. That's it. That's the I am. Right
and
there.
It's the same, no matter what I place on the screen, I would still describe the screen the same way every time.
If the next image on the screen is a yellow image, I say describe the image, you say it's yellow. I say ask you describe the screen, it's transparent, it's empty. If I ask you, you say I am depressed, you describe the depression, it's dark, it's heavy, it's dense. Ask you to describe the I am, it's transparent, it's open, it's at peace. Next day, you say, I am in love. I ask you to describe the feeling of being in love. It's effervescent, it's bright. You describe the I am. It's exactly the same I am that you felt yesterday in the midst of the depression. It's always there, always the same, veiled by the depression, veiled by the feeling of being in love, just as the transparent screen is veiled or seems to be veiled by the black image or the yellow image. And the I am is there, even in a deep depression. The I am is shining there. It's what Albert Camus, the French writer, said. Where he said what he meant when he said, "In the depths of winter, I finally realized that there is in me an invincible summer." It's what the German mystic Meister Eckhart said when he said, there is a place in the soul that has never been hurt. That's what he was referring to.
So what is the difference between the soul and the awareness?
The soul in this context, he means the mind. The soul would be the religious word for the mind, which would be the contents, which would be the... And the awareness would be the essence of the mind. So it's like saying, if let's say you're looking at my image now, and there's an aspect of the image that you're looking at that is completely pristine. What is that? It's the screen. The image is not pristine, but there's one element of it, namely the transparent screen, that is colorless. So the soul would be in this context the mind, the image, whereas the awareness, which is synonymous with being, would be the transparent screen. Our essential being.
And do you distinguish between the authentic self, the awareness self, the soul self? Like, do you use these words interchangeably? Like, do you believe that there's...
I use the words awareness, consciousness, and being synonymously. I use different words depending on the either on the context of either on the language in which someone has asked the question or the context in which I'm speaking. The authentic self, I think I would use more in relationship to the character rather than the essential self of being or awareness. So if I was referring to somebody's authentic self, I would be referring to a character whose thoughts, feelings, actions, relationships were informed by their essential self.
Yeah.
So if you say, she's so authentic, I wouldn't then be referring just to pure awareness or pure being. I'd be referring to the character which expresses the qualities that are the nature of her essential being: peace, joy, intelligence.
Yeah.
And those qualities of peace, joy, and intelligence, they express themselves in activities such as kindness, compassion, tolerance, justice, and so on. So these would be human expressions: kindness, tolerance, justice, compassion. These would be human expressions of qualities that are, you could say they were sacred qualities. They are the eternal qualities.
Yeah.
The qualities of being.
And Rupert, you said something that changed my life. I was so grateful to hear you speak to it. So I'd love for you to share with the audience in your words, because I won't do it justice. But so much of this, so much of the philosophy spirituality world talks about the great illusion, right? That we're living in this space where we are, this isn't real, right? And that sort of has this slippery slope quality into nihilism, like nothing matters. And it's really bothered me. And I heard you speak to it, that it's always bothered you. Because I don't want to, Laura Coe's here. She's living. She's meaningful. And I got into this big debate with
you
myself.
put your finger on it. The way you formulated the question, you conflated, and I did this for 20 years. It troubled me, just like it's troubled you. We equate something that is illusory with something that is not real. That's the mistake. So when we hear in the spiritual traditions, the world is an illusion, what we hear is the world is unreal.
Right.
And something in us rebels when we hear that. I mean, the world is not real? Come on.
What are we doing?
I mean, the world is real. Can you honestly say, someone, a parent of two young children, and they claim the world is unreal, and you say, you really think the world is unreal? You don't care if your children are in pain or suffering? No, they think their children are real.
Yes.
So we all think the world is real. Yeah. So the confusion comes from equating something that is an illusion with something that is not real. So let me try to explain the difference. Something that is an illusion is something that is real, but is not what it appears to be.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take the example of the image of my face that you're looking at. You appear to be looking at my face. Yes?
Right.
Okay, now reach out your hand and touch my face.
Right.
Okay. You don't find my face, but you don't find nothing.
Uh-huh.
What do you touch? You touch the screen.
Yeah.
So my face is an illusion,
Uh-huh.
but like all illusions, there is a reality to it. And the reality is the screen, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
An illusion is something.
You're in England and I'm in Chicago, so we're doing.
Sorry, yeah, we're on Zoom. Yeah, yes. So an illusion is something that is real, but is not what it appears to be. Now, something that is not real is something that cannot even appear as an illusion. For instance, a round circle, so a round square.
Sure.
Try to imagine now a round square. Can you even imagine an illusion of a round square?
No.
It cannot even appear as an illusion. It is utterly unreal.
Yeah.
So when in the spiritual traditions it says the world is not real, the world is an illusion, it doesn't mean that the world is not real. The world is obviously real.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that it's not what it appears to be. What does it appear to be? It appears to be 10,000 discrete and independently existing things made out of something outside consciousness, namely matter. That's how it appears to be. What is it, and why does it appear like that? Because we perceive it through our 5 sense faculties.
Mm.
And the world appears to us in accordance with the limitations of the faculties through which we perceive it. What is the world really? It is the one infinite reality made out of that which ultimately cannot be named, but which we might name consciousness, spirit, love, being, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So the world is only an illusion. The world is an illusion in the sense that it's real, but it's not how it appears to sense perception.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when we look at the world, there is one part of the world. What we're seeing is an appearance of reality. There is something real there, but it appears the way it does because of the lens through which we perceive it. It's like when you put on orange-tinted glasses and you look at snow. You put on orange-tinted glasses, the snow appears orange. Now, the orange color is just an appearance.
Yeah.
But the snow is real. So the orange snow is a mixture of the white snow, which is the nature of the snow, and the orange tint that our glasses confer on the snow. So that the orange snow is a conjunction of reality, the white snow, and our perceiving faculties, the orange glasses.
Right.
And that's why William Wordsworth, he said this beautiful thing in this poem. He said, "Therefore am I still a lover of the meadows and the woods and the mountains and of all that we perceive of this green world, of all the mighty world of eye and ear, both what they half create and what perceive, well pleased to recognize in nature and the language of the sense, the anchor of my purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart and soul, of all my moral being." The important part is both what they half create, both what we half create and half perceive. We perceive reality, but we create its appearance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not just through our perceptive lens, but through the thoughts and the feelings.
So imagine that consciousness were to put on a VR headset, a virtual reality headset, and it's made of thinking and perceiving.
Mm-hmm.
So the glasses, the VR headset, is just made of thinking and perceiving. Mm-hmm. Immediately, as a result of that, reality appears as a world in time and space.
Uh-huh.
The time and space are not inherent in the world. They're not inherent in reality. Yeah. Reality is dimensionless consciousness. It's just that reality appears as time and space because we look at it through thinking and perceiving. Thinking confers a single dimension of time on reality, and perceiving confers 3 dimensions of space on reality. So the world appears to be in time and space. And then because we don't realize, we think that the lenses are a clear window through which we look at reality as it is. No, we're looking through orange-tinted glasses. We're looking through glasses that are tinted with thinking and perceiving. Yeah. And the world appears in time and space as a result of that. The time and space are not out there in reality.
Right.
They're how reality appears to a human mind. If our minds were configured differently, if the VR headset was not made of thinking and perceiving, but it was made of Xing and Ying,
so telepathy,
we'd perceive a completely different world. We'd be perceiving the same reality, because there's only one reality, but it would appear to us in accordance with the mind through which we perceived it.
Right.
So a human mind consists of seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. Surprise, surprise, the world appears to us as sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells. If our minds were made of Xing, Ying, and Zing, then the world would appear as X's, Y's, and Z's.
Right.
We'd see a completely different world. We'd be looking at the same reality, but it would appear different to us.
Yep. And that's the whole proverbial tree in the forest, right? And
yes.
So, Rupert, this question about love, at the core of everything is love, oneness.
Yes.
People confuse romantic love and this love. How do you describe this love that you're speaking of?
Remember, right at the very beginning, Laura, I suggested the non-dual understanding could be formulated in this simple way. Peace and happiness are the nature of our being, and we share our being with everyone and everything.
Yeah.
So this second part of the statement, we share our being with everyone and everything, that's what love is. When you love someone, don't you feel that you are one with them? Isn't that what love is?
That's right.
We appear to be two different people, but we feel this love. What we're really saying is that our thoughts are different, our feelings are different, our bodies are different, but at the deepest level, we feel connected, more than connected. We feel we're the same being. We may not formulate it like that, but that's what the experience of love is.
Well, I'm tapping into the awareness within myself, and you are within yourself, and we're meeting each other through this sort of space of deepest experience.
Exactly. So we're exchanging thoughts and words now, but actually, as a result of this exchange, there's this feeling of connection between us. Now, imagine if we had this conversation with absolutely no feeling of connection between us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was just a functional conversation. We would not have been able to have this conversation. And likewise, your listeners, hopefully through the conversation, they feel deeply connected to us. We feel that we're sharing something. What we're really sharing is our being, and the words are the means by which we are able to recognize our shared being. Now,
and is this what we go back to at death? We go back to this universal love?
We could say that we go back to it as a concession to the belief that in life we left it.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, even in life, we were never really anything other than that.
Right.
When the walls in your home, the home that you're sitting in Chicago now, when the walls are taken down in 50 years' time, will the space in your room suddenly go back to the one universal space? No. It was only ever that space. It never ceased being that.
Yeah, that's a brilliant metaphor. You have the most brilliant metaphor.
It seems to be enclosed by and to share the limitations of the four walls of your room. But if you were to take a sample of the space in your room and the sample of the space outside and the sample of the space in my room in Oxford, they'd all be the same.
Mm-hmm.
You take a sample of your being now, and you take a sample of my being now, and you take a sample of the being of all the people who are listening. You take a sample of all the beings who are not listening, the saints and the sinners and everyone. You take the sample of their being, it's always the same. It's the same being. There's only one being. That's love. The recognition that we share our being is love. In other words, love is the nature of reality. And when we feel love, that feeling is an intervention of reality into our normal dualistic way of thinking and feeling. Normally we think it's me and you, I and them. Love collapses that sense of me and you. And it's the revelation of our shared being.
So then romantic love, like why is there a specifically unique experience with one individual where
Because due to the conditioning of our minds and bodies, some people that we meet have the capacity to affect the dissolution of the sense of separation more effectively than other people.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But then we, as a result of that, we then fall in love with the person. That's when all the trouble starts. It's not really the person that we were in love with. What we love is the recognition of our shared being. It can be celebrated between two people. It can be expressed between two people. But love is not a relationship between two people. Love is the collapse of relationship between two people and the revelation of their shared being.
Beautiful.
And relationships would, there would be far less conflict in a relationship if we realized that it's the being we love, the being that we feel one with, not the person. The person is there to celebrate that shared being. And there are all sorts of different ways of celebrating this shared being in different types of relationship. You celebrate it with your parents in one way, with your children in another way, with your neighbors another way, with a stranger another way, and with your intimate partner another way. But they're all, however we express it in these different ways, they're all ways of sharing and expressing the same shared being.
Beautiful. So we're coming to a close. I would love for you to speak about enlightenment because there's a lot of views out there in spirituality around getting to this place, and that
Laura, I've been talking for an hour and a half about enlightenment.
Right, I know, but I just want you to finish with dispelling this one part, right?
No, you're absolutely right, and I.
Like Rupert, we're supposed to get outside of everything to be enlightened, right? That there's and I know we've been talking about it.
Yes, enlightenment. I believe this for years, that enlightenment was some extraordinary experience. You imagine the best experience you can have as a human being. Well, enlightenment is something bigger and better than that. And that if you meditate hard enough or practice or discipline yourself or deny, you'll eventually, if you're very lucky, you might have that experience. That's a complete misconception.
Right. And then when you get there, nothing will bother you and you're going to be free of all
Enlightenment is simply the recognition of the nature of our being.
That's easier to get to.
That's easier to get to. We've been there. We've touched it many times in this when I suggested earlier, imagine removing all the layers of experience that are not essential to you. What's left? You said presence, space. And the next question was, so that's not yet enlightenment. You've just gone back to your being. The next question was, tell me about your being. What's the nature of your being? And you paused and you said spacious, peace, at ease, fulfilled. That's enlightenment. The recognition that peace is the nature of your being and that you share your being with everyone and everything. In other words, enlightenment is not an extraordinary experience. In fact, it's not really an experience. It's just the recognition of the nature of the being that we always are, but which we usually overlook in favor of the content of experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Beautiful. Rupert, you're a gift. I am so grateful to have you on the show, to have you in the world, and to share your views with all of us. Your new book, You Are the Happiness You Seek, Uncovering the Awareness of Being. Obviously, we've talked about that idea throughout the show. If people are looking for you, Rupert Spira, is there any other sites or anywhere else they can find you?
YouTube is the obvious place to go. I've got lots of videos there. My website, all the information about meetings and events and books and everything is there.
Yeah.
And I'm also making an app at the moment. And so I'll let you know when it comes out. There'll be an app of these short 10-minute meditations. So I'll let you know when that comes out.
Beautiful. And we'll have it on our website. If you haven't somehow bumped into Rupert, just the podcast, the YouTube channels, there's meditations. I mean, we've barely scratched the surface. I've taken your retreats, your weekend workshops are beautiful. So thank you again. Anybody out there who's listening, please run over and check out his information. It'll change your life. And I deeply appreciate you sharing with us today. Thank you so much.
Well, I deeply appreciate your asking me to join you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome.